Alright guys, you already know what it is, alright? Toontown Rewritten, Let's Play, part number 8. I can't do a highlight of comments because I literally sweat this to where it's so surprising, I know. I used to do this all the time, but it's to the point right now where I'm recording a video immediately after ending the previous video. It happens so rarely, but I feel the passion and the burning in my fucking boots to continue, man. So there will be no highlights of comments from the previous episode because the previous episode isn't up yet. But I will gladly showcase comments from you guys because I love you guys so much that for the previous 2 episodes I'll be doing in the next one. Does that make sense? So do not fear, and please feel free to comment with whatever you want, man. If you like, obviously I'm gonna feature as many as I can, and anyone that, like, dude, I love you guys, man. The comments are seriously, they sometimes just make me want to cry in such a positive way. It's not like a sad cry at all. So what we were talking about in the last episode, and where I hope will still be okay, man, if I upload this previous video, and people are just like, yo, shut the fuck up about that work shit, man. Shut the fuck up. Then, you know, I'm probably just gonna have to scrap this, and then I will, I'll just make another video after, I guess, that's not about this, talking about a different subject, but hopefully you guys are all on board, and if you are, appreciate you. It's gonna be a spicer, dude. It's gonna be a spicy one today. So, what I wanted to talk about today is more specific examples of problems that I would see within the company that I was working for, and how I went about to solve them, because the whole idea is I've already alluded to it a bunch, but so within this company that I was working for, think of it as a sectioned off part of the company that was doing a lot of the heavy lifting, let's just call it, for making a lot of the money from within the company, was done by a select few amount of people. And that's not to say that it's like elitist or something. I don't think it's elitist at all. I just think that the reality is it was making like millions or whatever in profit a year, and it was primarily being done by only a handful of employees. And so what this can cause, though, because it's such a few amount of people doing such a important and big task or whatever, it can lead to people burning out, people going fucking crazy, people blowing up at everybody over it because it wasn't getting done in the exact specific right way. So from this or whatever, it was extremely hard at first because it's an extremely, like, daunting task. It's not necessarily that it's challenging with your brain, but challenging because of or not even challenging, it's hard because of the amount of time you have in a day and the amount of let's just call it monotonous elements of work that you have to do in order to successfully process shipments or in order to successfully do your job. So because of this, there's no room for error in some cases, especially early on, and when you do have an error, you don't hear about it for at least a month because of how the shipments work. So after that month, it's hard to trace back, solve the problems that you were running into, and then plan for the future ahead. Especially when people are going through this company, especially within this specific area, like a fucking revolving door. So there's nobody staying within this company for longer than 6 months to a year. So from that, you run into all these issues. So the employees or whatever were not there long enough to be competent from within their position. And then you have people just constantly running through, getting burned out, screaming in a fit and leaving. You know, that was a commonplace for my specific area, and it was really stressful at times. And I remember when it was getting really bad, I remember telling because this was after my immediate higher up got fired, or not fired, but he quit, or it was a huge scream fest. So it was not good. Whatever it was, whether they got fired or they quit, he can't come back now, you know, essentially. From that, I remember telling my higher up, I was saying, if work to me is like a vacation from my reality of life, and as soon as work becomes more stressful than my real life, I've got to consider quitting. I remember telling him that. Not necessarily word for word, but paraphrased. And so my life at the time was outside of work. So even though work was, in some cases, and for some people who might have had a more traditional or classic upbringing with not as dramatic of problems, I guess. And that's not to say that my problems were so elevated that it should be like I should be considered some fucking war hero or something. That's not what I'm trying to say. But I'm saying that people who are not experiencing it so day to day and it's such an intense volume, and it's such an intense like constant like pain, suffering, that kind of stuff. People who didn't experience that, this kind of work would be the end for them. They wouldn't be able to do another day no matter what. But for me, even with that going on, it was still a vacation, a literal vacation from my regular life. Primarily because I was able to produce to something. I was able to make a positive impact onto something, a huge impact on something, and provide thousands of places essentially with clean water. Because without them being sent that, their water would not be clean. If that makes sense? So because of it being on a recurring basis or whatever, if they do not receive them because we're fucking up or whatever, then their water wouldn't be clean. So for me, there is a tie to it that it seems like me going into this specific area, it was like the stars aligned, you know? And I hate thinking that everything happens for a reason like that. But the reason why I consider my sister's like deaths or whatever so hard and painful is because I felt like there was nothing I can do to help them. What I perceive is the reason why they had so much problems is because of especially on my mom's side, the makeup of where they were when they were growing up. And the idea is that they were in Canada. I'm not bashing Canada, please. I'm not bashing Canada at all. I love Canada. But the point of it is where they were specifically from within Canada was one of the most polluted places you could ever live. Water pollution was insane. There's a big heavy like metal refinery plant that my grandfather worked for there. And I hope they like made good money there and everything. But the idea is that the living conditions were nuclear, you know, and it caused damage, genetic damage. And so from my mom's side of the family, through the genetics, my sisters got the worst dealt hand probably ever imaginable because of all these issues. That's what I see it as. I'm not a doctor. I receive information. I investigate things myself, and I can determine that really what it is essentially I'm alive because of a genetic coin flip that I got lucky on. And what can I do when I was experiencing all this negative? What can I do to make positive change that'll make it so things like Haley and Emma dying before age 25, each of them, horrible, atrocious thing that nobody could really solve. Doctors could not solve it. Nobody could solve it. They were destined to die at an early age. And what can I do to try to prevent that from happening to other families? The answer for me is providing clean water to thousands of places. And the goal, of course, is to provide clean water for fucking everyone. Of course it's going to be for fucking profit, dude. You have to keep the fucking lights on. But it's all about profit that isn't insane. You don't have to have crazy profit margins. You can actually buy things in such bulk that you can charge customers cheaper than what they'd be able to buy from the manufacturers directly. And that's what I'm trying to work on, you know? And so through all this work and through all this struggle, through all this, the whole idea is what I want to do is I want to make it so no matter where you are, and obviously I'm going to start with the United States. Shipping internationally is a fucking bitch. I've done it. It's a bitch. For even commercial, for me, it was an absolute bitch having to do it once. So unless they make it more feasible and easier to do for me, it's going to be hard for me to accomplish that. But right now, my goal is from within the United States, and obviously going forward past that, once we take care of the United States, you have to take care of your own first. Once I get through with that, and once I get all of this under control for to the best of my ability or whatever. And I know I probably sound batshit crazy right now. Seriously, I know I do. But the whole idea is that I'm going to make it so that a kid growing up or whatever, they can go to specific places and that will be known. This place has water that you can safely drink. It'll be like a green light, you know? It'll be like a green light, and that kid who doesn't know shit about water, who doesn't know shit about anything, they just want to be a kid and live their life. They don't want to be destroyed by something like lead-infested water, you know, or pathogens within a water system that will get them sick or ill or terminally ill or die, you know, or cause genetic issues down the line for their kids or their grandkids. That's the whole idea of what I'm trying to stop. And it sounds really too open-ended. It sounds too extreme. It sounds impossible, you know, truly. It sounds impossible. How can I, one person, fix an entire water system? And not even fix, really. It's how can I make it so that when it goes to the user, it's clean? That's what I'm trying to solve. And with what I was doing with work, it was solving with water filters or whatever, with extreme like logistics, with planning. It's solving the issue for 15,000 places. Will they have clean water when you go there? And the answer is yes. In these 15,000 places, essentially, I can guarantee you, personally, that there's going to be clean water if you go there. And the whole idea is I want to branch off on that. I want to go beyond those things. I want to keep going forward, and I want to make it so that nothing like that will ever happen again. Seriously. And so yeah, it sounds crazy, it sounds impossible, and I know I'm out of my fucking head, you know? But that's how I will continue to move forward despite all this extreme negative that I've experienced in my life. And that's the way that I'll be able to sleep at night too, because I won't be able to sleep if I'm not doing something like that. So that was a huge tangent, and not even necessarily really work. Like, it was definitely work tied, but it wasn't really a specific story of work, and I kind of just went off on the rails again, dude. I always do. So the idea is, for me, anyways, find work that you can see yourself growing into. And it's not to say to shy away from other elements of work, especially nowadays with like COVID or whatever. It's really hard to find work in general. So maybe, especially going on at first, just find something that will work, you know? Find something that actually is hiring. But an important thing for me was understanding that I can continue to grow and I can continue to work up and work my fucking ass off and work myself up. That was the biggest thing. So do you see room for being able to work yourself up from the position that you're at first? Because the idea was that when I was starting out, the money that I was making wasn't high, you know? And so the idea was yes, this is like a starting job for me. There was no prerequisite of some extreme education or degree or something like that. It was a starting position. But through the years or whatever that I've been working there, and of course, like I said, the story is completely fake. I don't know if I told you guys in this episode or whatever, but this entire story of my life, this entire story, everything that I'm sharing right now, it's not real. So keep that in mind. So if I mention names, or if I mention things that could sound like that they mean something, or a specific person or a specific entity, I want to reiterate that none of this is based in reality. It is all fiction that I've made up in my head. And it's not just to cover up for liability or anything. Like, I seriously mean this. It is complete fiction. Everything that I'm saying right now. So without further ado, let's explain some of the specific instances within work or whatever that really helped myself grow, I guess. So the first one that I remember is seeing. So like I said, these buildings were detached or whatever. These buildings were detached from each other. There was a main building, a giant building, and then a much smaller building that I would work from on the side because they didn't have enough space in their initial building. They're actually, at the time, they had construction of an even bigger part of the building that they were making. It was probably 2-3 times the size of the previous building. So during that period, they had all this growth or whatever. They had a bunch of people that were working in these extremely small places because they were growing too quick. You know, it was a beautiful thing to see, but they didn't have the building yet. So the whole idea is they have all of this stuff. They have all this stuff within a warehouse, racks and racks and racks, and I mean hundreds of things, you know, hundreds of pallets of things. And if you've worked in a warehouse or if you've worked really like anywhere where there's like racks and stuff, you would kind of understand where I'm coming from with this. So there were racks that were so close to each other that you wouldn't be able to get a powered forklift through them, like sideways, to be able to pull the pallets out in the first place. So that was the biggest struggle of it. So there were bigger pieces that were up high, and you wouldn't be able to pull them down in the first place. And then the other thing was, too, is that you would, in order to access any of it, you had to pull out all the stuff on the floor that was clogging up the lanes to where the forklift or pallet jack would be able to go through. And I'm sorry if this is, like, getting a little bit too jargony for you guys, but really what you'd think of it is it's like think of it like hoarding, if that makes sense. If there's so much stuff that you're not able to access the stuff that you need to actually sell or to be able to give back to, like, customers or whatever, then it's not functional. And so that's what I saw it as. I wasn't really working there that much in this other side because I was tied to the place that I was working on. But when things were going good with what I was doing there, I would go over to the other side and help out because it was out of control, you know? So the whole idea is during the summer when it was particularly slow at certain points, or if there was a day that was extremely low, then what I would do is I would go to the other building, the big building, and I would go up in racks, in very high up racks or whatever. So if you were scared of heights, I don't know, this probably wouldn't be good for you. I conquered my fear of heights like relatively early on, so I was good. Like I was good to go up a couple, like 4 stories, 3 stories, to be able to like inventory machines and inventory things to understand the value that we're holding in all these racks. So what I would take into account here though, and this was a very hard summer for me because in particular I was okay with heat, you know, but there's a different kind of heat because heat rises, right? And this was an area that wasn't necessarily properly vented out. So there was stuff like heat and other elements lingering there for months or whatever, and there's tons of fucking dust everywhere. So the whole idea is that I was going up 4 stories or whatever in probably 120, 130 degree heat, all while I'm supposed to lift these heavy fucking machines, dude. Like, in some cases, it was well over a couple 100 pounds. You know, I had to shift them to the side, open them up, grab the serial numbers from them, and pretty much condense because there was so much stuff that we had to be able to even condense and palletize the stuff first before we were able to do anything with it. So I remember there would be days where I'd be... Wait, what? It's done? Oh, okay. Wow, are we almost done, dude? Holy fucking shit, we're almost done with TTC? What the fuck? But so what I would do is I would be going up, doing the serial of all these, trying to determine whether or not the stuff's actually, like, of any value, bring down actual trash that was up there, because there was actual trash that was up there, too. And then, from that, I would write it all down. Either at first it was on a piece of paper, but then it was decided that I was going to bring a Chromebook or something, like one of those really small laptops where I could type up the information to an Excel sheet, so we'd be able to track everything. Because at the time, this was not a thing, and I thought it was just logical, right? Why wouldn't we have everything be traced through a system where you'd be able to search up an item or a serial number, and then you would know what rack that's on and all of that? To me, that's just common sense, you know? But it was definitely a turning point for them, like a really good turning point, where they decided that they're really gonna start getting more current with this stuff, especially if they're gonna remain competitive. So then we finally started to get all these racks like organized. I started to condense them all. It was super productive for me or whatever too, because I was essentially not only making them tons of money with what I was doing previous, but now I'm also helping them with their problem of holding on to too much stuff and not turning that stuff over, because everything within that section, if it's sitting there, there's a price tag. It's losing money sitting there. You want to be cycling through stuff quickly to where nothing is sitting there for too long because it's a waste of space. Think of it like a person like living in an apartment. There's a cost to them, or somebody living in a house. There's a cost to them being there. There's a cost for this item that's not being used to be on that pallet. That's what I saw it as, and that's what I tried to explain it to like owner, co-owner, and my higher-ups. And I mean, it makes sense in my head. So, whole idea is, so I was doing that. I would be coming down from days of doing that, literally like I just jumped out of a fucking pool. I was drenched with my own sweat. And it was to the point where I was, at some points I was dangerously close to getting like a heat stroke or something. But the whole idea is that, well, it was actually really funny. One guy who I wasn't necessarily a huge fan of at the time, just because of his association with a certain part of the company, he actually gave me one of those always cool towels to put on my neck. And I remember that was like a super humbling moment for me. I was like, wow, this guy's like really nice actually. But so I had that to prevent me from getting a heat stroke. I was basically inventorying all of their inventory of everything, you know, their entire warehouse, and I was doing it very specifically. So it was adding a lot of value to myself from within the company or whatever to be able to identify this stuff and to be able to help them, you know, help them essentially evolve to a more technologically advanced company. And so once all that's done or whatever, and once the construction of the new building took place or whatever, oh my god, dude, I have a story about that. So this was a funny time, and I've got to introduce to you some more people too. So there are two people that I want to introduce you to at first. So one is a friend of number 3. If you guys remember number 3, super lanky black dude with definite family problems and a crippling weed addiction, you know. And I don't like to use weed as an addictive thing, but you can be addicted to water, my man. You know, you can be addicted to anything, and he was addicted to weed. So the whole idea was he had a friend that he used to work with. He referred him or whatever to our company. The company accepted him or whatever, and he was working in the other building. So the building that was not directly attached to us. So the story about him, though, what should I even call him? I'm going to call him Whippets, okay? No, I'm going to call him... Dude, that'd be so fucking mean. What should I call him? I'm going to call him Red Bull. Seriously, I'm going to call him Red Bull. There's a reason for it. So I'm going to call him Red Bull. And the reason why I even mentioned Whippets is because he loved doing Whippets. If you guys don't know what that is one of the worst things you can do to your body. Literally one of the worst things you can do to your body this guy liked to do on the weekends. And I don't even want to explain it because I don't want somebody to be able to do it. But knowledge is power, so don't fucking do this. I'm telling you, it's degenerate shit, and you will fry your fucking brain cells to the point where you're actually an IQ of -5. So what Whippets are and what he did over the weekends or whatever, what he did in his free time, was he inhaled like aerosol, like think of the like whipped cream or things like that have that like aerosol canister or whatever. He would inhale that to get a cheap and dangerously destructive high. So it fries your brain cells is what it is. So never do it. It's fucking stupid. But he did it. He didn't care. You know, that's besides the point, I guess. But he was a really interesting one. He was a really interesting character. He would get fake mad at you. He was actually really funny, you know. And I remember him very specifically because for every lunch he would have, and this is the funny, like in giant air quotes, lunch, he would just have a pack of cigarettes and a Red Bull. Or he would have a couple cigarettes and a Red Bull is what he'd have for lunch every day. So you're like, how does this man fucking function? How is he alive, you know, if that's what he's doing? The answer is I don't know in some cases. Like, he was... I don't know, man. If I was doing that, I would actually be dead. That's for sure. So that was Red Bull. And then, I guess really I have 2 more people to introduce you to. The other person who was already there previously, but I forgot to really mention, we'll call him... I'm going to call this one Dick, alright? So Dick was a short, kind of chubby Mexican dude who was... When I worked with him, he was definitely a little bit lazy. And he would spend hours at a time in the bathroom. It wasn't necessarily always like this, but especially late on, he would spend like an hour a day at least in the bathroom. And I'm not trying to say that you can't ever do that, because I've had the shits pretty bad once, you know? Like, I can understand it being like a one-day thing, but holy shit, man, like, get off your fucking phone, you know, in the bathroom. One of the funniest things about him, in my eyes, was that he would get a salad from Wendy's every single day. And the thing about Dick and the thing about number 3 is both of them were very ingrained in the culture of cheating on their wives or their girlfriends. It was like a meme to them, you know? And that kind of disgusted me, and I started to realize how scummy some men actually are within this world that we're in. So, obviously with memes, it's one thing, right? But they took it to another level where they were definitely doing stuff that I would find disgusting for any human to do. Like cheating on your wife or cheating on your girlfriend or whatever, being not faithful or not honest. But the whole idea with Dick is that he had ties to my initial first boss that I've ever had, my first boss, the one that we call Tank. So he had family ties to him, so he didn't have to work as hard. Essentially, he had a favored presence, I guess, and he didn't get treated as hard. So there was definitely a conflict of interest there with him being the boss, and there was a huge problem. But so that's somebody that I wanted to introduce to you. He worked on the other side along with Red Bull. And then, so Dick and Red Bull worked on the other side. And then there was also one employee too, who I now can introduce to you. This was probably about after a year that I started working there. And his name's Brando, alright? He was a family member of the person that invited me or referred me to be a part of the company in the first place. So I knew it wasn't going to be an issue with him or whatever. And in fact, he was probably the hardest worker that was there next to myself, you know what I mean? And I'm not trying to fucking toot my own fucking horn here, but I worked my fucking dick off, you know? So I'm going to say that I worked hard. So all those people have been introduced. Brando, he was working in the area that I was working, especially initially early on, because we were struggling at the time. So to bring it back to the construction story, so there was a big truck delivering furniture. I mean, like a big rig, like the big fucking truck with a full back, like a semi load of stuff, you know? And they went into an active construction site. And so what they decided, though, this dude who drove it from all the way from fucking Canada or some shit, which doesn't make sense to me, but they bought all the furniture from this Canadian retailer, I guess. And so this dude, big fat dude in the rig, he gets it stuck in an active construction zone. So the thing is, though, is we don't have forklifts that can go like outside and pick that stuff up, especially during an active construction zone where there's holes in the ground and stuff from pretty much fucking sand and shit, you know what I mean? Like it's bad. There is a giant hole right in front of the entrance to the big rig truck, like to the back of it, to where we'd be able to pull stuff out. The whole idea is, the only reason why I even knew about this is because they fucked up so bad that all the furniture was sitting there in the truck. And so I came to work one day, I saw that, and I was like, what the fuck is going on, man? Who's going to be able to pull that stuff out? Because it's the furniture for our building. All the furniture for this huge fucking building. All packed into this one giant semi. How are we going to get this out? And I thought about it, and I was like, God, I'm happy at least it's not me doing that. Well, the joke was that it was me that was going to be unloading that by hand, because we didn't have a forklift that would be able to go through this giant gaping hole that's right in front of the entrance to it. So the whole idea is we, like me, B. Rando, and Chris, and some of the construction workers that were working there on the building, all got all of this furniture, literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pounds. Well, it was really thousands when it came down to it, but so that was one of the worst days that I've had there, purely because our senior workers or whatever, and by senior I just mean they've been working there longer, which was Dick and number 3, They both did not help us at all. Even when we asked them directly if they wanted to help, they said, no, I'm not doing that shit. So we work our dicks off, dude. We are sweating. Our backs are killing us because we're lifting stuff that should not be lifted, essentially, by our hands. You know, like, I mean, it's not the end of the world, you know. What's done is done, but that was a really hard thing to do. So the funniest thing was, I remember carrying actual desks off. So they're probably like, I remember carrying, it might have been the CEO's new desk. And it was probably, I would want to say, like, between 400 and 500 pounds. And I remember we had a couple guys, like, starting to wean it off of it. And then we had to carry it around this giant hole in the ground with water in it. And we had to carry it up through a doorway and then to the side, like, of where these cement outlines of the new buildings would be. And it was tough, man. It was fucking tough. That whole day was tough. I remember that was the day that I figured out that everybody but me within this company that I work for smoked cigarettes. Even people that I didn't think at the time smoked, they all picked up a cigarette after that day and just started smoking. Because it was hard. And not a lot of people could, like, deal with it. And it was funny because I see them all, like, take drags from the cigarette or whatever. They're like, they ask me if I, like, want some or whatever. And I mean, they know I don't smoke, so I'm just like, no. But that's when it hit me or whatever, how brutal that day was in general or whatever. But day-to-day working wasn't absolutely horrible within the company. There were just days that definitely, like, bothered me with how they tried to solve problems, or how they didn't try to solve problems, rather. I'm trying to think of, like, more stories that I could share with it or whatever, but I think that I don't know, man. There was one that I really do need to share. So there was essentially a raid from another company onto our company, and they raided us by ignorance, by our ignorance, meaning the little guys of a company. They raided us. So the whole idea is they took probably $20,000 to $30,000 worth of machines and stuff from us by saying it was for an order without proper documentation or paperwork. And so it seemed so fishy when it was happening, because it was two guys and they were like, yeah, like, this person told us that, like, we're ready to go now, like, they're pushing it, like, we need to get this stuff out now, like, we're in a rush or whatever, which is already, like, red flag simulator times 1,000. But I didn't know at the time who I was supposed to, like, alert really with, like, those red flags or whatever. The whole thing was just the most sketchy thing ever, and I wasn't really even there for the whole day either. I was going back and forth between the two buildings, but this was going on in the main building. So the whole idea is we didn't have serial numbers of any of the stuff that we gave to them, so they just stole 20 to 30,000 worth of machines or whatever for free, and all they had to do was just bring an unmarked, like, truck or whatever into the area. And so what happened though is even our lower guys or whatever asked one of the people who were signing off on this, saying, like, are you sure that this is, like, who it's for? Like, are you sure that we should be doing this? And she said, yeah, like, this is all good, like, send it out. And so what's funny is she ended up getting reprimanded, turning into firing, because there were tons of other issues with her too. But the whole idea though is it blew the fuck up, man. And I remember it like it was like a nightmare, dude, at the time, because a bunch of our guys, like, that I work with, got suspended. I didn't get suspended because I wasn't attached to it, but it was insane, dude. Everybody was coming down from every like, office to either, like, scold us or question us on it or whatever. And it was just a huge fucking mess, man. But, I mean, from that, we put in, like, more strict policy, I guess, you know? So at least it wasn't looped into oblivion. So there was some learning from it, but it was not good for morale within the company at all. That was actually more of a quick story than I expected. What the weirdest thing was is they told me initially, my immediate boss, and then the friend of, or not the friend, but the family member of the boss or whatever. So that was, Tank was the boss, and Dick was the family associated worker underneath. So the family associated worker, Dick, he told me, dude, you're getting suspended too, you know that, right? And I was like, well, that's fucked. I'm going to go talk to the CEO and co-owner about that because that's, like, actually messed up. I wasn't even a part of it. And he was, like, laughing or whatever, and I was like, so are you joking then? And he was like, no, like, you're seriously getting reported or whatever. Or, you're not getting reported, you're getting an infraction, and if you get another suspension or whatever, then you're getting fired. And I was like, I'm talking to the CEO then because that's bullshit. So from that or whatever, that was a lie. I mean, I didn't know it was a lie, but I was starting to get heated from it or whatever because it's not fair. I wasn't a part of it. So it was a ruse between the two, though. So my immediate boss at the time was telling me how I was getting suspended or whatever, and then he's like, nah, I'm just fucking kidding. I'm not actually suspending you. But that really bothered me because I don't think that's necessarily something you should joke about. But so that was the end of that story. I don't think it was that good of one. But fuck, man. So I'll tell you guys the last and really the way that I describe it as the end and the new beginning of what I do. So when I was probably about a year in, maybe a little bit longer, maybe a year, I think it must have been like 6 months to a year. So the person that I initially worked with, number 3, he quit abruptly. Well, actually, even before that, Red Bull, who was the Whippets king, he quit probably 30 days after he started working, roughly, because he got forklift certification and he wanted to get a different job after. He was one of the people that would job hop like crazy. So once he got his forklift cert, he was out. So he left, and then he convinced number 3 to quit as well for another job. So within the course of probably like a month or two from that, so we lost Red Bull, we lost number 3, so both of them are gone. Then from that, my initial boss started to go crazy because he had to do a bunch of work that he wasn't normally used to doing. So he started to pin it on like he was having like heart problems or whatever. He couldn't lift this stuff. He couldn't do these functions. And really what I saw the problem was is that he wanted to be a manager. He wanted to be a boss that never did anything at all, really. He just wanted to oversee everybody else. He didn't want to actually do anything himself. And that was part of the problem, that people could see through that. And they would say, well, why aren't you doing anything? And there'd be problems. So the idea, though, is that the morale was already really bad. They started quitting. Morale started to get worse or whatever. And so then B. Rando, he went, he left too, but it was actually like a, or no, he didn't leave yet, but actually, yeah, he did. He might have went back to college, or he went to some sort of schooling or something, I'm pretty sure. My memory might be getting faded here. But the whole idea, though, is that he was gone, but for respectable reasons. Like, he actually put in 2 weeks, 2 months, whatever it was. You know, he put in the time to let people know that he would be gone, so he wasn't a scummy piece of shit about it, like the other two were. And then from that, though, we had Dick quit. And from that, too, Tank quit as well. So Tank blew up on the CEO, blew up on a lot of the higher-ups or whatever, and obviously he didn't do it really in the correct fashion if you want change or whatever. He kind of just emotionally just exploded, imploded, and then left really the whole area in shambles and really self-sabotaged the entire like operation that I was working on too. So he intentionally hid things, intentionally really destroyed things that would make it very hard for me to do my daily functions because he wanted the whole operation to fail then, once he's gone. He didn't want it to succeed, which is it's a very horrible mindset to have, right? But the whole idea is I was left with a steaming pile of shit that I had to take care of, and I had to bring back from complete chaos back to normal. And it took a lot of time, but nowadays it's a lot more successful than it's ever been. And so what I'd say to it is that even during those worst times or whatever, and when I was about to quit because it was so insanely bad, the thing that saved me there was, unlike something that all the other people did before they quit, is I actually talked to my initial higher-up or whatever. Not Tank, but a higher-up. And then I talked to the COO and CEO about putting in my 2 weeks because it was too stressful to be working there and to continue working there. And everybody thought that this person was just such a hard ass and that they would never listen to you. They'll just say, see ya, like I don't give a shit. But the idea was is that once I started explaining myself, and once I started saying like I don't want to quit, it's just literally I can't keep working here because it's damaging my own health, because there's no end to this, like there's no end to this in sight. There's no solution. I'm not getting anything from this anymore. And so what happened is the exact opposite of what everybody was telling me. I got a raise. I got a roadmap of what they were doing and how they were planning on taking care of this problem. And none of that would have happened if I would have just left abruptly. So even in the worst scenarios, what you can try to do is think of those horrible scenarios as opportunity to prove yourself. Because I didn't think I had what it took to be able to fix a sabotaged mission like that. But I did, and what I did to do it, I truly think that there's nothing that inherently special about me. I think what I have that not a lot of people have is the ability to never give up on something, and the ability to pound something into the ground so many times until something finally sticks. And that's what I think is different about me than some people, I guess. I think everything else, it's just like skills, you know what I mean? You just learn skills, you retain skills by doing them over and over again. But for me, because of the situation with Haley and Emma, my sisters, is that I've got a permanent fire underneath my feet, and my intensity, my foot being on the gas pedal at almost all times with what I'm doing now is because of that. So I'm going to end this video now. I hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, as always, be sure to drop a like. I'm probably going to stop talking about working out for a bit. I think I've really talked about it too much these last couple episodes. But if you'd like to see more, if you'd like for me to talk about anything specific, let me know in the comment section below. But I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace the fuck out. Hope you have a great rest of your night, day. See ya.